Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed your sessions. I'm sure you all enjoyed your lunch. Unfortunately, there is no time for a siesta. We're going to go straight into our next session, which is sure to keep us all awake and energized. It's a session that looks at the future role within the international landscape of the energy sector. Specifically, we'll be asking the question, what does liquefied natural gas, LNG, what kind of role will it be playing in meeting future demands for energy throughout the world? So it is now my pleasure to invite to the stage our panelists, His Excellency Saad Sherida Al-Kaabi, Qatar's Minister of State for Energy Affairs and the President and CEO of Qatar Petroleum, Patrick Pouyanné, Chairman and CEO of Total, and Claudio Descalzi, CEO of ENI. This session will be moderated by Zain Asher, anchor at CNN International. Zain, I leave the session in your hands. Welcome to everyone.
So I think it's clear that natural gas is having its moment on the world energy stage. Natural gas will be the world's fastest growing energy source by the year 2040. There are clear advantages to natural gas. It is abundant, it is flexible, and many people see it as a bridge fuel in the fight against climate change. But there are clear challenges. A lot of people right now are talking about a supply glut, oversupply, low prices. There are also, obviously, geopolitical tensions in many parts of the world. So navigating these complexities is really what I intend for this session to be about. So I want to start by asking all three of you the same question, and that is, what is your perspective on the fundamental changes we're seeing in terms of LNG dynamics to the market, and what is Qatar's role in all of that? I'm going to start with you, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much for the introduction. First, regarding LNG future and the gas in general, you said it's a transition fuel due to what's happening in the climate change and the worry about CO2 and other emissions. We see gas as a destination fuel, but not a transition fuel, but a destination fuel. And the reason for that is you see that that's the cleanest fossil fuel known today. I think definitely renewable energy is going to be part of the solution, but also having a strong gas-based development in any country is something that's very important. A lot of countries are moving away definitely from coal and going into gas. And some are also abandoning nuclear for different reasons. So gas we see as the future, really.
As the future. Mr. Pouyanné, do you agree with that? As more than just a bridge fuel, but actually a pathway to the future for natural gas?
Yeah. Gas is a fossil fuel, but gas is a future because the first challenge for the world is to switch from coal to gas, which will be part of the solution. And gas offers a lot of flexibility. And so from this perspective, of course, the LNG industry is moving, is changing. And for the best, the objective of all this change, in fact, is to be able to provide a more affordable LNG to the world. Because if we want really to promote natural gas and to gain this market share, we need to make it more affordable, because the fight against coal, again, is a matter of price, of affordability of it. And so we see a lot of changes in the LNG world. The first one is that in the last 10 years, many more customers around the world are buying LNG. There were only 20 countries in 2010. We have more than 40 countries which have some receiving terminals today. So that's a big change. Many more customers, more producers, of course, with 4 big ones. Qatar, largest one, not yet, but will begin again. There is a race. Australia, the US, and Russia, and other players, many more. We see also another trend of commoditization, more and more short-term contracts. Because the US LNG has put a big push in this market. Commoditization, which is good because in fact it's a matter of optimizing all the logistics and so the costs of all these LNG for the customers again. And so there are many changes, and new players, of course, large players are taking place. QP is the largest one, of course, but Total is maybe, if I accept QP, and among the private companies, we are number 2 with managing already 30 million tons of LNG, which is 10% of the market next year. And these large platform players have a role to play in order in the system to optimize, again, the cost of producing and delivering LNG.
And Mr. Descalzi, your perspective, please.
They already said everything, so I try to invent something new.
Yes, please.
No, I think that's something that we have to highlight that is very positive for the environment, that the LNG that grew a lot, connected the world, created liquidity in the gas, and now the gas price, we saw very well last year, went down. So now we have the European market hub, we say, and the Asian hubs that are the same and not far from the Harry hub. So that is good for the environment. Why? Because the low gas price is pushing out coal. So I think that for us it's not really very good to have a price so low.
Right.
That is true. But what means that the coal is going out. Okay, in the U.S., what happened with the unconventional, that the gas was so cheap that the coal has been really reduced, and they reduced the general CO2 emission of about 20% in 10 years, and not by through policymaker or through any kind of policy, but because the market made a choice to use gas. So that is what's happening worldwide. And LNG is very important because every year is increasing about 10%. That is a lot. And the last years, for example, about 60 million ton per year started production between 2018 and 2018, Russia, US, and Australia. Clearly, this is good. The price is low. Now there are more infrastructure, as Patrick said, but the liquidity changed completely the game. So that means that you must have a very good quality gas, a low cost, wet gas. So you must really be able to compete and try to make money also with a very low gas price.
But I like what you said, that yes, the low gas prices, which have, I mean, you compare gas prices from 2008 to where they are now, yes, it does squeeze profit margins, but it is important to remember that it does end up being better for the environment. So, Your Excellency, I want to talk about Qatar's future. Qatar has the 3rd largest natural gas reserves in the world. It is the world's biggest exporter of LNG. Now you're sort of ramping up, aiming to increase output capacity. You're increasing production to 127 million tons by the year 2027. Just walk us through what your strategy is there and how you anticipate that all of that will meet demand for East Asia.
Yeah, as you correctly mentioned, we are increasing our production. Currently, we are producing 77 million tons per annum. We already announced that we will reach 110 million tons per annum by 2024. We also announced recently a further development that will take it up to 126 by year 2027. We think there is a requirement for gas for the future. Big demand is coming from a lot of growing economies. China, India are the largest growth areas that you'll see, but a lot of Asian countries, Southeast Asia, development of countries, and as mentioned, you need development of some infrastructure there to get it in. But our strategy is really to serve the requirements of all these nations that require gas. That's the cleanest fuel, and we have a very set plan on how we're going to do that. We are, leading, of course, in LNG. We've pioneered really the big trains and how we develop these big developments in chunks, if you will, and we're doing the same. We're on plan for 2024 with 110 and then 126 by 2027.
And as His Excellency mentioned, Mr. Puyeni and Mr. Descalzi, a big part of Qatar ramping up production is to meet demand from East Asia. But we know that there has been a slowdown in China when it comes to GDP, and also a relaxation of the rules about switching from coal to gas as well. Just walk us through how the slowdown in China is affecting your business, or how you anticipate it will affect your business going forward.
But again, it's back to some fundamentals in a commodity business like natural gas. You know, we do not control the price of our products in our industry. What we control is the cost. And why are we here today? Because in fact, in this business, we are looking to where can we produce at the lowest possible cost. This is what we control. And the logistics and what I said. And Qatar, from this perspective, point of view, is very well positioned. Because if you control the cost, then you will be able to manage volatility of the gas price. Coming back to you, it's true that today, China, well, let it be, you know, slowdown is 6 instead of 7%. It's still a big one.
Right.
And still we see an increase of demand of LNG of more than 10% this year. And so it's relative. You know, they've done 15, 30, 50, 30% of increase. Okay, it's slowing down, but it will be by far the largest market for LNG in the future.
Right.
It's obvious. Then you have new countries, because as Claudio said rightly, when you have a low price, it helps the demand. And a country like India is is really growing its position and demand for LNG because at this low price, it helps to get the demand. And if they are accustomed to use more and more natural gas, then we can establish a market. It's why this year we have taken positions in 2 regas terminals in India and even in city gas in India, because we strongly believe that it's part of the market which need to be developed. And I think our industry, which is the difference between oil and gas. In oil, you know, you produce and you know that the market will take your oil. Don't be worried. In natural gas, we are also to create the demand to go downstream the chain, and not only to produce. But again, the volatility requires in front of it a very low-cost resource, and Qatar is not only abundant natural gas, but is also able to produce a very low-cost LNG.
And Mrs. Scalzi.
Yes, I'm positive also, if I think that the next years, a couple of years, 3 years, will be very difficult. So, or you are Qatar, otherwise you risk to lose money. I think that there are a lot of investors in LNG that they really push hard to produce LNG without a final market, because LNG until a few years ago was point to point. Now it's at least 30-35% is spot market. But I'm sure that there are a lot of LNG that are going to lose money. Cost, as Patrick says, is the first point. Then we are going to have in the future flexibility, because for mobility, gas for mobility is growing, and gas could be very good for mobility, also for the heavy vehicles, or for the boat, for the marine operation. So if the price is low, they say there are a lot of good opportunities that are going to be open. But if you are not Qatar, you have to make different choice. So what we are doing, because we are not Qatar, we are using, first of all, we have to be all along the chain. The upstream side must be really, really good. And then we have to use existing facilities. For that reason, we are expanding our facilities in Nigeria, in the Bonny Island, with the seven trains. For that reason...
That's where I'm from, by the way. Nigeria, that's where I'm from. Sorry, just had
for that reason, we are expanding Nigeria. And
Thank you.
No, it's not true. It's not true. We look also to our economics, and and then we are using Bontang in Indonesia. And Bontang is practically empty, so we have a lot of gas there. You don't have to make any investment in the LNG. You are close to good markets, so you have to make the right selection. If you are not rich, if you are not power, you have to be humble and make the right selection, and maybe you don't lose money. But the big investment that has been done, I see some bubble over there.
Did you want to comment on that?
I just want to comment on one thing regarding China. There is a fallacy that the announcement that came out of China regarding the transition from gas to coal they had announced that that's slowing down. It's actually, they're trying to push gas into regions that are deeper into China, and that transition is forcing them to go too fast. And that's really and there isn't enough gas that could reach due to infrastructure. So they've slowed down the instructions or their requirement for that transition, but they haven't slowed down their strategy for gas. They still want to reach 100 million tons and growing.
Okay, and that's obviously a big market.
Yeah, that's
for
a big market.
I do want to touch on geopolitical tensions and how that affects each of your business. For you, Mr. Descalzi, you know, there's been obviously a lot of this talk about Turkey drilling off the coast of Cypriot waters in an area that was previously awarded to Eni and blocking Eni's business there. Just give us your perspective on how geopolitical tensions in Europe are impacting your business. Turkey.
Now, Turkey, yes, you talk about the East Mediterranean area
yes,
overall,
exactly.
because Turkey, we don't produce there, they don't produce gas, so...
But they're blocking some of your ships from doing work.
They tried, yes, to block that. They are willing to block. You know, Euro can be reached by different means because we have pipes. We have pipes from Tunisia, Algeria. We have pipes from Libya. We have LNG in Egypt. And so I think all the production that is we are producing in Egypt is untouched. Also in Libya, there is no problem. In Cyprus, there are some areas where there is some discussion. It's more a political discussion because we drill wells. We are not here to make any war. So I think that is more to a political discussion. It's really a shame for Europe because Europe is increasing the gas demand and the domestic production is going down. So it's importing 60, 70% of the gas, and at the end of the day, they have to import most of the gas for more than close to 500 billion cubic meter per year. So the Russian gas is not enough, the Norwegian gas is not enough, and the other gas is going down. And this area, if you look at the East Med as Libya, Egypt, Lebanon, Israel, and Cyprus, they need development. They need a big development. So it's really a shame that we don't give to this country this development. And there is a win-win because they are developed themselves, they produce gas, and they can complement the other gas coming from Qatar, coming from the US, and go to Europe because Europe is really looking for gas. It's a political situation that I think in some way the politicians have to solve, Europeans, and find a way to give the right solution that at the end of the day is sharing the result of this discovery or sharing the result of the commercial or the sale of LNG. I think that when you share and you try to include our people, inclusivity, I think, is one major point. I think that we have to stop fight, aggression, and try to look at the small margin of profit without looking at the real value for the future. And we need to create value for North Africa.
Right.
And that is quite important. So if the politician will be wise, clever, smart, looking forward, maybe they are going to find a solution.
Right. Your Excellency, Qatar still has a deal with the UAE when it comes to supplying natural gas. But what has been the measurable impact of the blockade on this particular industry, if any?
Of course, the blockade, I really don't like to talk about it because it's a thing of the past in our mind as an oil and gas industry. It's something that had an interruption in the beginning with some of the supply chains. We got over that, and I think within 5 to 10 days, we announced that, you know, we can withstand this forever, and we did, and we had to do different things that basically localize some of our supply chains or change the way we do business. but it actually practically has no effect on us. Regarding the gas pipeline deal itself, it was a decision by our leadership that we're not going to mix politics with business, and we'll continue supplying the people of the UAE gas, which is about 40% of their power.
Okay. When it comes to geopolitical tensions, though, I mean, sometimes opportunities can arise. For example, in Europe, you've got Germany with the Nord Stream 2, but they do want to pivot away from Russia. How much of an opportunity is that for Qatar?
For us, we talked about Asia as a focus area. Definitely that's the biggest growth because of just the sheer population issue with 1 billion plus in each India and China. So of course that's the biggest growth area, and that's the most undeveloped. Regarding the developed nations, which is mostly Europe, we supply the entire continent. Everywhere where you have LNG import facilities, you'll find us either have supplied or are still actively supplying. We're also getting into additional liquefaction, regasification capacities. We just bought the capacity of Zeebrugge terminal for the, up to 2024. We're also going to be buying additional volume in Europe that will be announced when we get done with that. But Europe is a big market. We don't see ourselves as in competition with anybody. We see ourselves, I think, looking at, or just reflecting on what Patrick has mentioned. We focus on what we control, which is our cost.
Right.
We want to be, safe, efficient, and reliable. And we will supply Europe. Europe is a very big market that we're supplying. We'll continue to supply. Russia, other LNGs will also be servicing that market. And I think it's good to have multiple sources for any nation. Thank you.
Mr. Puyane, you wanted to chime in?
Yeah, I think, to be clear, at the end, the European market is not decided by political matters. It's decided by customers, and most, by the way, of the players are all private players, utilities, etc. And how do we behave? We don't behave because we have orders, political orders to buy gas. We looked what are the merit curve of cost of pricing, The reality of Europe in Europe is that, as was rightly said, the production is declining. So there is room for more gas. We need more gas, that's clear. The interest of Europe is obviously to diversify this route of bringing gas. Once you are an importer, it's a question of security of supply. So as much pipes, as much LNG terminals, everything is good for Europe. At the end, what will be done? Obviously, the question about does US LNG go to Europe? It's not the natural market for US LNG. The natural market for US LNG is China. We are the largest investor in US LNG. We will export more than 10 million tons next year from US. We did not invest in the US to go to Europe, but to go to China and to Asia. So I hope the trade wars will end quickly. Otherwise, there is an issue for security of supply. And Europe is just a sort of last resort because it's an open market. Having said that, the dispute between US LNG and Russia is very strange to me. Russian gas, pipe gas, is obviously less costly. You bring it. But the US LNG is putting a ceiling on the natural gas price in Europe, which is good for the European customers. So in fact, this competition, from a European point of view, is very good for customers because we have less production. So we need to organize it by having maximum pipes, and we don't see. We will see if the pipes are empty or full. No, it will be decided at the end by the pricing and the relative prices between the sources. So I think this is the policy. And we try to mix too many things, thinking that political matters. It's true that security of supply is important for each country. But when we look seriously to who is deciding what in Europe, all the players are privately owned, most of them.
Okay. And Mr. Descalzi, I just want to get your take on something that Patrick talked about, which was the US's role in the changing energy landscape. The US is obviously importing less and less. It recently became a net exporter of natural gas, exporting gas to 33 countries around the world. What is the impact on that, on the natural gas landscape, beyond just pricing? Or maybe it is just pricing.
It's a big impact. First of all, more production, and production that can reach Europe. As Patrick said, it's really not really easy for the American LNG to reach Europe because the TTF is very low. So when the TTF is at $3 per million of BTU, $3.50 per million BTU, and the area hub is almost 3, that means that you can lose at least $2 each time. You're not able not only to recover your capex, but also not able to recover your OPEX and your shipping and your liquefaction tariff. So it's much better to go Far East for the US. It's much better to go to Europe for the Qatar LNG because it's in terms of cost is more competitive. But change in terms of quantity. In any case, the American LNG creates a global LNG. The liquidity I said before that connected all the different hubs. That was good. That means competition. But that reason say only the best LNG, the best upstreamer, the best gas, the best situation will win, because in any case, for some years, we have more supply than demand. But more supply than demand is creating more demand for the future. We have to remember that China, a few years ago, they were growing in terms of gas, but then the price reached between $16 and $18 per million BTU, and suddenly they switched to coal. And that was terrible for them, also for India. So now that the price is well below $8, $7, or sometimes below between $8, $7, that is good. The system became more competitive, and as my colleague and the minister said, cost, efficiency, technology, be focused is the game. And that is good because we grew like that, so it's our job.
Okay, go ahead.
Just
Patrick.
a word about US and China. This is really a key point. LNG can play an incredible role, about rebalancing the deficit, commercial deficit between US and China. LNG is obviously a great way to do it. There is one condition, which is that from Chinese point of view, it's a question of security of supply. Because when you have an energy system which relies about importing natural gas, if you don't trust the security of supply, because of what is happening like these last years, trade wars, it will affect the fundamental belief of Chinese customers. Can we trust this supplier or not? And that's something which needs to be taken into account. This is why I think the news that we heard that there was a first trade deal is very important. It's very important because, again, in this world, in a global world where this energy is moving around, having some fractionation in the system and trying to have wars, etc., is not good at all, because it creates, again, lack of trust, and in the energy field, it can lead to losing customers, for US energy. We are losing customers, and so, which is good for Qatar. So I think Saad today, when he goes to, and that's one of the advantages of Qatar, let's be clear, is that despite all the tensions, like you said, Qatar has always been a absolutely full, reliable supplier, and we have partnered Total here in Qatar since the beginning of the history of LNG, and we never missed a single ship to any Japanese or Chinese customers, and that is an incredible value in the energy field.
Yeah. Do you want to comment on that?
Thank you. Regarding, of course, the trade dispute or war that there is, I'm happy that there is news that this is going to be over. Although maybe it does serve the Qatari LNG because it gives us room when there is something like that going on. But long term, I think having free trade, especially in the energy sector, where it's a very important commodity that impacts the growth of economies. I think having security of supply and having free flow of where economies and economic decisions make the deal happen or not, but not politics, is crucial and very important. Regarding the US LNG, we have one of the largest single project established in the US. We have taken a decision to build it early this year with our partner ExxonMobil, and that's 16 million tons of LNG. It's quite a large volume, but I think having that flexibility of having volumes that would come to Europe from the US and having from Qatar, I think gives a flexibility that is not available with many sellers.
And for you, Mr. Puyane, and also Mr. Descalzi, I want to talk about exploration. So in this sort of low price environment we're seeing, how much risk is the right amount of risk? Sorry, I need to put the microphone to my face. How much risk is the right amount of risk? Is it better? Obviously, Eni has had a lot of risky bets that have paid off when it comes to exploration, but is it better in this environment to go for high risk with exploration, or go for areas where there are known natural gas fields, less reward maybe, but lower risk? What are your thoughts, Mr. Puyane, first?
I mean, exploration is part of what we are looking for. For me, the main driver for exploration, we are not looking for targets where it could be too expensive to develop, either natural gas or oil. It makes no sense today. It's not we don't have a problem of scarcity, let's be clear. I think that was the idea 10 years ago when the price was at $100, very scarce resource. I think it's not true. So you can be more selective than that. You can look for where and exploring where you think that you will have efficient developments, I think. And there is also in natural gas, particularly when I joined the industry 20 years ago, the explorers were not looking for natural gas. We were saying there is a risk of finding natural gas because by that time, LNG was very immature, so we didn't like it. So which means that we left behind us a lot of gas. And we are discovering now in East Med, which was there for long. We are looking around. So there is a lot of natural gas to be discovered. And on our side, that's true that our strategy is more to go to where we know that there is a lot of gas. Qatar, Russia, Yamal, I have hundreds of TCF of gas. And now Mozambique. Even if I a little disagree with Claudio, I think you can, when you have a huge amount of gas, even if it's a greenfield project, makes it profitable. So it's true that it's much better when it's a brownfield. We are partner in some of them. But when, because you have already the infrastructure amortized, but you can also, when it's very large, because when you think to Mozambique, for me, it's not at all a two-train story that we are building. In fact, we think already to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 train. We have the resource. So when you invest in LNG, you need to have this perspective. What is not good is to build a green field on something which is not big enough, because then you will not be able to amortize your infrastructure. But Mozambique, I encourage you to come. Like we've done, it will be the same story of what we've done in Nigeria, by the way. And but we will invite you next week for the sanction of the new project in Nigeria, Claudio and me, I'm sure.
Claudio, can I get your take, Claudio, on that, on exploration?
So I don't want to take any risk. For that reason, my choice is exploration, honestly. Yeah, because if you want to take risk, you buy, but you don't know what you are buying, and you have only to pay a premium. And then you have, in any case, a big upstream or geological risk. So our choice, my choice was 10 years ago to increase our internal skills, take large share, and go for conventional exploration. So not shale oil, shale gas, or any kind of very easy where there is no risk, but where there is everybody's there. So it means that the real risk is competition and arrive as the last one. So we went conventional. We took very big share. We looked for something that before nobody was really went deep inside, like the pre-salt, the big pre-salt and the stratigraphic trap, and we found in 8 years more than 16 billion of barrel equivalent. Part of that we sold, and we are continuing. We continue because that is the reason why our costs are low, because if you discover, you look and discover, you go through exploration, our exploration cost now is 80 cents per barrel. If I buy, I have to pay between 6 and 10, and that is the difference. So 80 cents per barrel, then you have $6 in terms of operating costs and $11 per barrel for the development. You have your technical break-even that is between $15 and $17, and there, start to be competitive, and there is the real competition because you go, now we have we can say FOB price for LNG on average on our gas that is less than $4 per million BTU. And that is good. We are not Qatar. Qatar is much less, but the volume is much, but that is coming from our exploration, and we move less than $4. And we are, as I told you, close to existing facilities, so all the chain is less expensive.
Just a word about exploration, because I have my brother there. Each time QP is joining Total in an exploration license, we make a discovery. We've done it in South Africa, and it was a new project. We've done it in Guyana. So he's joining us soon in Namibia, in Mexico. So I hope it will be another discovery. So
every time
I don't have the recipe of Claudio. I have QP
maybe just
now every time that Total join in exploration, there is a dry hole. So
So I think
that's a problem between Italian and Spanish.
I was joking.
Okay, go ahead.
If I may say something on exploration, I mean, since your question is the appetite of risk in exploration, we're a very unique national oil company in the sense of how much we're going into exploration. We see exploration as basically the springboard for our international expansion, and I think what correctly Claudio has said, when you want to buy into existing assets, it's very expensive. But when you go into exploration, you have to have a risk appetite, and you have to have a big pipeline of projects that are coming, and you have to be willing to take a risk that's between 10 to 20% success rate, and you go with good partners like the ones that are here with us, and we are internationally going in many places as a national oil company. We no longer are looked at as a national oil company because we are really more international. So we did discover in South Africa, and two discoveries in Guyana, and I think maybe a third one very soon.
I'm hoping that I can get in a question on pretty much the most important topic, which is climate change, but I know that we're running out of time, and I do want to see if any members of the audience have any questions. There's a hand up right over there, if we could get him a microphone. Yeah, there's in blue, he's right there. Yes, okay.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Mamdouh Al-Qudsi. I have a question for three of you. You're the biggest gas producers. Do you consider raising the gas prices in order to mitigate the usage when you arrive to this point of everyone's using gas over oil?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I don't understand the question. You're saying if people use more gas, that means you put a premium on gas price?
No, I'm saying do you have any policy to raise the prices of gas to mitigate the usage in order to save the environment?
Oh, okay. No, I think, gas prices are determined by markets and it's supply and demand. So we have no control. We're producers, we're price takers. So we have no control over that, I think.
On the contrary, I would say we are again, our policy is to try to lower the cost, then it will be the price which will be done by the market. But to be clear, the competition in the market against it's coal, it's not oil. The idea that natural gas should be at oil parity, because in terms of energy value, is not the reality of the market. In the energy market, you are competing between different sources. And it's why we see today a disconnect between the oil price and the natural gas price. But fundamentally, we replace coal. So if we want to be competitive, we have to this is the right benchmark, in particular in countries like in Asia.
There's a question right over here. If we can get this gentleman a microphone, please. He's standing up.
Thank you, Madam. A very undiplomatic question to Mr. Pouyanné, from a former French minister. Monsieur le Président, yesterday's Barcelona meeting ended with repeated very high commitments by the Europeans to cut emissions. We want to be exemplary to the rest of the world. Our country, as you know, is 0.7% of world population and 0.7% of world emissions, and yet we propose very, very ambitious program where the main polluters, that is the United States, China, and India, don't do very much to abide with those rules. Even the US is leaving, as you know, the Paris Agreement. So I would like to ask you your personal thinking on this. Are we not penalizing ourselves, crucifying our industry and growth by these singular policies?
I think this is a climate debate. It's a difficult debate today. It's first, on one side, it's a global issue, but a complex issue. And I see a big divide today in the world between the developed world and the European countries in particular, and the emerging world. In the emerging world, clearly the priority today is to get people out of poverty, is to develop the economy. Energy is just fundamental. And so the priority in terms of energy is affordability of it. Of course, they want to respect the environment, but the priority is we need to have access to energy. In Europe, and if you say in the OECD world, where we have built our world thanks to carbon fossil fuels, in fact, because we have developed all these cities and all our economies thanks to that, of course, we have a legacy and a sort of historic responsibility to be at the forefront. Having said that, it is clear that Europe today is willing to be very in the forefront. We have this clean energy deal. And I think that if we don't protect one way or the other with some carbon adjustment mechanism, the European continent, then I'm afraid the industry will leave the continent and will go in the rest of the world. So it's a choice to be done by the policymakers, but there is no way to continue to be at the forefront and to believe that we can spend and spend and spend more money, so increasing the cost of energy in Europe, because this is the reality. We will spend trillions of dollars, so the cost of energy will increase, and so it will be detrimental to the industry if at the same time we are not logical with ourselves and we don't protect the continent from importing goods from other parts of the world where the CO2 content will not be, I would say, controlled like it would be in Europe. So it's a choice by policymakers. I can understand the policy. I think your question related to France, I'm not a diplomat, but generally I don't comment my matters of my own country outside of my country. You know, I learned that. Having said that, that's true that France is in a unique position because of nuclear industry. We have one of the best CO2 per point of GDP. And so it's a debate, should we do more or ask other countries, even in Europe, to join us before we do most efforts? That's again another topic, but it's a more a national one than a global one.
And actually, I do want to accept one last question from the gentleman over there who's been standing for quite some time. Can we get him a microphone, please? He's standing with his hand raised. Oh, he has one.
I have a microphone.
Okay, great.
Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Canny. I'm from the University of Houston downtown, and Houston is, the United States energy capital. And in Houston and around the world, we see that even in the maturity of oil and gas, we see that both aging and new infrastructure developments are endangering vulnerable communities and environments around the world. So if we're going to require a lot of new infrastructure for rapid growth in LNG, how are we going to make sure that vulnerable populations and environments globally are taken under consideration and protected?
I think, regarding that element, we all as an oil and gas industry have to take more responsibility in what we do with carbon capture, storage, and looking at the environment in general. I mean, if you look at, I'll talk about our example and what we've done here in Qatar, is we've announced that we've started this year's, 2.5 million tons of CO2 sequestration. In addition to that, we've, with the expansion that I mentioned earlier, by 2024, we will reach 5 million tons. And maybe for the first time, I can announce that we are going to reach about 7 million tons by 2027. So, and looking at all the companies are trying to reduce methane emission and looking at the environment more critically. I think we have a responsibility to do more, and I think most of the companies are taking that responsibility on. But for humanity, you need energy, and there are going to be developments that are required. Otherwise, you can't have developments because renewable alone cannot keep up with the growth requirements. So I think we are being responsible. We need to do more, and I think all companies are doing much more to try and take responsibility for that.
Okay, unfortunately, we have run out of time. Can we just have a quick round of applause for our panelists, please?
Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you, Zain, for this insightful look into the world of energy. We now shift gears as we enter the fast-changing world of global and regional politics. Our next session is a newsmaker interview with the foreign minister of a country that seems to be quite a bit in the news lately. A once aspiring member of the European Union, Turkey is one of the region's most influential and powerful players. On NATO's southern flank, not only does Turkey straddle two worlds, two continents, Europe and Asia, but lately it can even have lunch in Moscow with President Putin and dinner in Washington with President Trump. As for breakfast, I don't quite know, but we just might find out with our next speaker. It's a pleasure to welcome to the stage the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Turkey, Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, and MSNBC anchor Ayman Mohideen.